of these tens in a medium kind of way, you could have that turn into a karma that results your entire experience as a hungry ghost or predator realm. If you do it in a small way, you could have what's called a ripened result, that any one of these karmas could ripen into your reality being that of a being in one of these realms. In a small amount, if you do killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, ill will, etc., in a small way, it could ripen as a result in an animal realm, right? So that's generally the description of what the over-habituation of these deeds, if you have them over and over, any one of them could turn into a karma that projects your awareness as a being for an entire life in one of these lower realms, right? The stronger that you do it, the deeper the realm. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we've had a whole course on that. Then the text, by the way, the text, some of them think that the animal realm might be worse than a predator realm, and some might be worse than a predator. It makes no bloody difference, right? If you're in a suffering worse than a human suffering, you have less time to catch your response to reality in order to change your reality. And that's why the human realm is considered the realm through which it has a subtle enough balance between pleasure and pain that you have what seems to be enough time to practice or come to terms with the things that are actually causing your world rather than what seems to be causing your world. You know, if you're locked in an animal existence, you hardly have the awareness, because you're forever being chased or eaten or whatever, to stop and think, if I stop eating something else, maybe my experience of reality might be different. You don't have that luxury. So then the texts go, if you happen to be born in a human realm, then there's a second type of result called consistent result, which your personal experience of your human world is somewhat related to the karma of those 10 deeds. Does that make sense? One way in which karma ripens is your personal result, called consistent result. It's your personal experience of a world as a human. So you might be in a classroom, a teacher's teaching English or whatever, and your particular experience of that is very different to all the other kids. That means something is driving your personal experience of that. And that was a karma relating to the flavor that you're experiencing. Does that make sense? So if you are lucky enough to be born as human, one of the ways karmas ripen, and in particular the karma with these 10, is your personal experience. Another one is also called consistent, but it really means habitual, is you build a pattern or a habit or a hunger for that same tendency. So if you have a lust for killing, if you have a lust for hurting, if you have a lust for lying, if you have a lust for divisive talk, some of us are more of a natural at any of these 10 than others. And so one of the ways that karma ripens is that you build a habit for that activity. So we'll see how, actually that one I don't need to talk too much. And then you have another one called environmental results. You are pitched, if you are lucky enough to be born a human and you've got the karmas of these 10 somewhere inside you, which we must if we're seeing the world and behaving in this way, the environment supports and encourages that habitual, as well as it reflects those karmas in a physical environmental way. And the reason there's an asterisk between those two is because I'd now like to go quickly through the 10 and show you what the text says are the correlations between any of these 10 and what you personally experience in the world, which means if you don't like that, you'll know which karma to stop or work towards. Does that make sense? Or you'll see why your world turns out to be a certain way, the physical characteristics and the environmental characteristics, and therefore what, according to Buddhist scripture, is causing that at a subtle inner level. Which of these 10 or flavors of these 10?
Is it supposed to be consequential results, not consistent?
No, it's consistent result. It's consistent with the act. It's supposed to be consistent result. They're actually both habitual and consistent results, both called consistent results. Let me see if I find the Tibetan word for it, see if there's a difference. Course consistent. So it's the first one is called course consistent, consistent with a course, which is number 2, Yutun, and the other one is just called consistent, karmically consistent. It just means one you build a habit for, the other one is your personal experience is consistent with the flavor of the karma. Yeah, so you'll see what I mean. So in other words, to change your world from a Buddhist point of view, you're now going to get a list of the things that might show up in your world that if you want to stop, if you like.
What's the LMS deeds?
Low, medium,
Oh,
large, medium, or small. So large, hell result, if one of those karmas ended up being the karma that projected you into the next life.
okay.
So it's important for me to tell you, which we're not going to cover today, that the 4 forces of purification of karma. So as you're reading this next correlations, if you do have a result in your life where, let's say, no one trusts you, doesn't matter if you're telling the truth, for example, you're going to see one of these in the personal result in one of the 10 misdeeds. It's important to know if that's appearing more and more in your life, that you are, I'm always telling the truth, no one believes me, you know, or no one seems to pay attention to me, and I'm telling them something important. If you can find the correlation between what's causing that karmically, it's important to stop the causes of that, but it's also important to do the 4 forces of purification to whatever it is that you must have had in your consciousness to create that in the first place. So it's this dual effect. So I won't say more than that, I'll do more of that. So karma result for killing. Personal result is you get easily sick. Let's see if there's more stuff here. You have little energy, you're lethargic, you're a sickly person, or you're more and more sickly. So that's a personal experience. So you can still be in a healthy world, yeah, but your personal experience of that world is that you can't get healthy, that you're a sickly person. You easily get sick, you have little energy. That you're born in a world that food or medicine, etc., has little effect, there's little power to crops. Disease is abundant, and people around you die early. So if you're experiencing this, the point here is if you're experiencing this, you can say that's a result of killing. That's a result of not valuing life. Yeah? Environmental, personal. You get the idea? I'll go quickly since we got 10 minutes. The correlations to stealing, taking what's not given. So as your mind records taking what's not given, you don't have enough means to get by in the world. You struggle to get by. Whatever you do have ends up being common property rather than your own property. So you have to mostly unwillingly share with others the things that, like water or shelter or the rest. Yeah? And the environmental result or correlation to stealing is scarcity of food and crops. Crops rarely work or are easily spoiled. So there's that. The correlation to sexual misconduct, some of them don't make obvious sense until you analyze them a little bit, or you look deeper into the reason why or the intent behind the activity. People around you are unreliable, so if you know that the basis of sexual misconduct is adultery or not respecting another person's partner, then you begin to understand why the personal result is that people around you are not reliable. Or you have competition for your partner, you have this constant sense of jealousy, or that there's someone wanting to take what's yours in terms of partner. You live in a filthy place, the smell of urine, hard to avoid bad smells, things are unpleasant. So that's the correlation to sexual misconduct. The correlations to lying is, like I said, no one believes you even if you're speaking the truth. And I know this feeling really well when you are the one person in a room of people trying to solve a problem and you are certain of your answer and you have like full confidence you can save the day, and people just don't trust what you're saying. Like that that sense should tell you that there is some nature in your consciousness that is forever misguiding other people. So from a karmic management point of view, if I want to stop the moments where I'm telling people what I know to be true, and I have this sense that they're not believing me and I've got to try and convince them and etc., then my behavior should change by telling truths. Does that make sense? Yeah. Environmentally, whenever you go into work with other people and you try and have a collaborative things fail. The collaborative efforts don't work out. There's a bunch of fear. Fear actually comes from most of them from here on, and you have this sort of paranoia that most people are trying to deceive you, and that is caused by not telling the truth. From a personal point of view, the personal result of divisive talk is you see yourself as having an unreliable character, that you can't keep things together. Does that make sense? There's people around you are fighting often, and that is caused by you pulling people apart. The environmental effects are you live in a place where the ground is uneven, it's difficult to taste, like Nepal. Bumpy roads, etc. Harsh talk, the result of that is you hear unpleasant sounds all the time, like the people above me trying to move for 3 days in a row, dropping things, fighting around you, lots of noise, bad music, even if this music is terrible, yeah, so it's aggressive to you, it's a correlation, according to Buddhist text, from you using harsh words towards others. And environmental results are obstacles, hard to get around, sharp objects. Water is lacking. Why would you say that water is lacking, or you live in a dry land? Why would that come from harsh talk?
It hangs up your speech.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it hard for you to talk.
That it's something to do with thirst. Yeah, I had that question too. Do you know, Ram? Do you know?
No.
They did say it. I can't remember it, but it had something to do with your throat chakra or with that. I can't remember. That's why I asked.
Maybe it makes it painful to talk.
Idle talk. No one listens to you. There's no value in what you say. You perceive that people have no value in what you say. You lack confidence. So in other words, what they're saying is, if you want to stop your self-perception of no confidence, if you want to stop the idea that nobody pays attention to you, pay attention to what you say. Don't waste your talk in stupid things that have no reason for being said. Only speak things that are meaningful and see your karma change. That's a different way of saying it. Things don't work out like crops. There's no leisure places around you. There's nowhere for you to go and relax. There's nowhere for you to have meaningful, insightful moments. They say there's no parks and so on. And the karmic results for the three of mind are coveting. Your life is driven by desire. You can see yourself being pulled along by impulsive desires. You are never satisfied. You take refuge in material things. This is like the country of America, North America. Yeah, we think that buying shoes, TVs and things are going to keep us satisfied. So they say that this can only come collectively from coveting, from wanting other people's things. Anything you do get environmentally then gets worse over time. So you might get the first, oh, I got this, and then it gets worse or less valuable or not important.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just to go back to the earlier coveting thing, I was kind of confused about the personal qualities. So if you're in a job and or say you're a teacher and you meet someone else who's teaching something amazing and you desire to have those qualities, is that and
So-
and maybe you study with him. Is it a difference maybe if it's Dharma versus like something else?
No, it's the thing is exactly the same, but the motivation is that I think the key difference between coveting and admiring something good in others, yeah, is that the coveting implies you wish it for yourself and not for them,
Oh.
yeah, and when you compare yourself to that person teaching or whatever you're learning, and you're like, if I just had it and they didn't, that ignorance that says the only way I can get it is if they don't, yeah, I want it for me. And then plus there's that ignorance that says, which I think is where the material refuge comes from, there's that ignorance that says, if I got that thing out there external from me, that ignorance that says, if I got that, somehow I'll be fulfilled, I'll be happy. That ignorance is the thing that I think is correlated to the personal karma result that says you take refuge in material things, because that habit of getting other people's things for your happiness, which is ignorant, is the thing that you think saves you, is the refuge part. Good question, sorry I didn't clarify. Yeah, ill will, you're driven by anger mostly. You end up not having any help. You see yourself hurting others often, and that almost despite yourself. Yeah, but you have this awareness of you. You live in a chaotic world with wars, disease, fear from harm in the military. And wrong view. This is interesting when you think about this. You begin to live in a world that keeps harmful views, where we say violence for violence. We say, when I was writing this, I got really upset about the Middle East. I'm like, it's in my consciousness. I can't be exempt from this being in my world. So you live in a society, or you live in a culture where what karmically is harmful is seen as valuable. Yeah. So TV, news, etc. values harming others or taking others, or we value. I know I keep talking about career today, I don't know why, but I know in the career path we value getting one over the next person, competing for each other, etc. So the result of not understanding that your world comes from your actions is that you live more and more in a world where the opposite is valued. Yeah. And then the environmental highest views dying out, so truths are dying out. You're surrounded by growing values that lead to etc., like I just said. And you can't things that truly protect you. You can't find things that get you away from the harm that's around you, because you didn't take refuge in the truth. Does that make sense? And again, the interesting thing about this is not, it's not some self-existent thing that if you follow these things, you'll be rewarded and not punished by some society, law, or God. It is your consciousness creating your reality. So if you want to play with your reality and turn some of these things, if you know you've got a problem with jealousy, if you know you've got a problem with anger, if you know you've got a problem with incessant desire, if you know those things are harming you, then this is one elixir that says, try this. And for me, it was just 3 months, and it was enough for me to change my reality enough. I'm not promising 3 months. I don't know to what level you can do this work to prove to yourself, do you have some control over the world you live in? This is the active work you need to do to get out of the cycles of samsara into a state towards enlightenment.
I thought about the one with a harsh talk that caused dryness because being placed without water, and because the calming or happening is always the same experience, it's not about the same thing as the experience. Yeah. If I remember, when we have a harsh talk, it means that the other person is embarrassed or humiliated, which the face becomes, the fluids, the energy body fluid become dry, like the blood doesn't come to the face.
I see. Yeah.
And
Wow.
the throat become dry, sometimes sweating. So it's like losing one of the physical effects of humiliating somebody that the fluid become contracted. So it is living in a place where
Wow,
you don't have
that's
external fluid.
interesting. Thank you.
It's
That's Ran, by the way. He's from Israeli Sangha, yeah, living in New York now. Can I say you're a Theravadan monk from before?
I used to be, yes.
Yeah, he used to be. So he's way more knowledgeable about these things than I am. Thank you.
Mhm.
No, seriously, he is. He's actually, I don't know the vows he took, he knows them, yeah. So I can only give you generalities. So if you are going to do some experiment with any of vowed morality, in particular these 10 should be easy because we have them all the time. There's a shortcut to getting a result quicker than you normally would. And this is the key problem about karma. The problem with karma is because there's a time delay between planting the seed and getting the result, doing the intention and experiencing the result, we don't have the focus of mind to understand that correlation. We don't have the wisdom enough to understand that correlation. And as time passes, less and less do we believe that the thing I'm experiencing now was caused by something I did in the past. So to speed that up and try and get a result faster, yeah, and like I said, with me getting rid of the yelling Gary boss, taking 3 months, that was because I did an extraordinary effort. I was so desperate and I made him into something completely significant. So I made him the big object, saying, if I can prove this, I can prove all of Buddhism. All of a sudden, he wasn't just angry boss, he became the truth or a lie of an entire world religion, and all of a sudden he became a very important object. Yeah, I was desperate. I was suffering so much, and I knew that if I could get rid of it, I could teach my family and the people I cared about. That's all I could master at that level. But that was enough for me to intensify the karma that I was doing with him. And then I wasn't going to do anything else but just this experiment to test out this theory. Because this was it for the rest of my life. All of a sudden the karma becomes big. So I put pressure on myself. So if you want some secrets on speeding up karma, besides making the object bigger, is the deeper your understanding of wisdom and the stronger your intention, the faster the result.
So
Yeah.
what was your action?
I got
How did you deal with it, boss?
I had an Israeli boss. Israel keeps coming up in my consciousness today. Had an Israeli boss. His name was Gary. I'd met him traveling the US. I went back to Australia to my nice, comfortable manager's job. He calls me up and goes, "I got the best opportunity for you. Our customers loved you. I used to be a photo rep and agent." He goes, "Come over here. We'll start a business together." And I'm like, "Sure, I'll go over there, but let's do a contract. You give me a visa and you get me an apartment and we'll negotiate how much money and what percentage." And he agreed to all those things. And then when I got here, he didn't get me a visa. He didn't get me an apartment. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. It's America. We can extend your visitor's visa. You can sleep on my couch." And it just dragged on and on and on until I was stupidly in my 20s, illegal, only working for him. If I left the country, I couldn't do anything else. And he was paying me whenever he wanted and whatever percentage he wanted, not what we had agreed. So I was completely stuck and I was screwed because I was also proud. And all my friends in Australia and my family in particular were calling me up, this is pre-internet, going, "We're so proud of you, you've made it big in New York." And we were photographing Oprah Winfrey, Whitney Houston, Angela Bassett, and I wasn't getting any money. But I had the appearance of being successful. And I wanted to keep that appearance to my family and friends in Australia. And that man, Gary, Gary, yeah, was the problem for me, right? He would come in every evening and yell at me and scream at me because I wasn't getting enough money or getting enough clients. Or every evening the line would be, "But Hector, you're stupid, you screw him before he screws you." No, seriously, these were his words, his ethics on business towards me. He was teaching me that the only way I could make money was to steal off the photographer, not tell him how much Oprah was paying, and we pocket the rest, even though we had a different contract. And I resisted that before Buddhism, before meeting Buddhism. And he didn't like me resisting that. He would yell at me this close in a way that I've never had before, like full red yelling face. And then in that time of high stress and difficult living situation, I met Geshe Michael Roach, and I had an equally negative reaction to him. I'm like, you're a monk, you don't know about life. You know, it wasn't, but he had something I needed. Intuitively, I guess I knew that. And in a point of desperation where I couldn't figure out how to deal with Gary, I asked Geshe Michael to teach me, if what you're saying is true, this all Buddhist stuff is true, then help me get rid of this guy from my life. And he gave me basically the lesson I'm sharing with you today, but in a much more sophisticated way. He basically said, if you don't want a yelling boss, you stop aggressing your world, you stop yelling at your world. And try it with him, stop yelling at him until you don't hate him anymore. And then it took me 3 months, and he gave me exactly what would happen. You stop, if you try this, you try to the highest intent, and if it doesn't work, you don't have to be a Buddhist, you don't have to believe Buddhism, etc. But if you don't try, you never know. He knew what to say to get me in.
So what, he
And
said if you stop yelling, you
basically
stop
he
hating?
said, if you want him to stop yelling, you stop yelling. Yeah. If you want to stop hatred in your world, you stop hatred. That's what he was saying, that's what the thing I was proving. But then what's interesting is that he said the way it's going to work out is you'll go in there and try not to yell, but you won't remember what I said to you for the first couple of weeks. On your way home, after your arguments, you're going to remember what I said, and you're going to say, damn, I should have not yelled. I've just caused more Gary for another few months. And eventually you're going to get closer and closer to the point of where he yells at you, and you want to yell at him. And for a few weeks, you're going to start yelling and stop halfway through the yelling, and he's going to think you're crazy. Which was exactly what happened. So it took me a couple of weeks. I would go, oh, I yelled. And then I'd go home and I'd go, tomorrow I won't yell, but tomorrow I yelled. Until I got to the point where the yelling started. So he would yell at me, like violent things, like aggressive things at 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then I would start yelling at him, remember these teachings, and stop yelling. And he'd go, what? What are you saying? Why you stop? What? And then I'd have to really bite, but the anger and the hatred, instead of being out there, I could feel was here. Yeah. And he goes, and you continue that practice until you just feel the sensation coming up and stop it before it grows. And then you'll come to a point where you won't even have that sensation. And I remember the first moment that happened, where Gary came in, he was violent as usual, like slamming down and yelling. And by this time I had enough practice to feel the impulse wanting to punch him in the face or yell back at him. And I'm trying desperately to prove this thing to myself, oh, forget it, this world sucks, you know. And I looked at him and he was just a mass of round, red face and oval and moving arms. And I didn't even have the impulse to hate him. I didn't even have the impulse to hurt him. I saw him as a suffering creature with blood rushed to his face, and I'm like, this guy is hurting. And I started crying. I genuinely loved him. I wanted him not to hurt. And then that beautiful moment disappeared, and I realized that he stopped yelling at that very moment because he thought I was crying, because he thought he'd won, you know. And so my mind went, oh, all the other stupid things. But from that very day, he never yelled again. Within a few months, I had an offer for another job. And then I didn't see him again for 10 years. And when I did see him, his son is now volunteering for our organization. So for me, that was enough proof, because I knew exactly day by day, moment by moment, every moment of Gary. Not only did I prove to myself the karmic correlation between my anger and experiencing an aggressive world, but I also had a moment of bodhicitta like I'd never had before. And at that moment for me, I understood this in a way that no talking about it could make me understand. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for sharing.
No problem. The other thing that speeds up a karmic result like that is to rejoice in other people's goodness. Out of all the things, is just stop being happy when other people fail, and actually look at people, and for the tiniest goodness they get, just be happy. the tiniest second of happiness they have, you just go for it for them. Because in a world where 7 billion people are desperately crawling over each other to get something, at least someone is getting something. And if you can have and build some genuine joy for them, this is a way to speed up your karmic results, because the intention is so profound and it's so counterintuitive to the thing we're trying to undo, which is samsara. Yeah, it really undoes samsara. The third thing is the she, the object. Make it powerful, like I explained with Gary. Don't just make it about removing the angry yelling boss. Make it about proving a world philosophy, saving your mother. Like, trick yourself into rationalizing. It's got to still be believable to you to make it. And so let's say you've got a problem with anger. Let's say you've got a problem with jealousy. Let's say you've got a problem with never finishing things, or whatever it is. Look for the correlation, apply these things, and do it for as long as you can get a result. That's the other question I asked Geshe Michael. How long should I try this before I say it doesn't work? And he says, you do it until you succeed.
What's SHI?
She, it means object. Is she, sampa, something tartuk. Do you remember the third one? She means the object. So the object to which you're enacting the karma. For me, it was just regular Gary, the Israeli boss. But don't just make it about the Israeli boss. Make it about the all-powerful representation of all aggression on the planet. And all of a sudden, if I can fix Gary, I can fix all aggression on the planet. The object to which I'm doing the karma is bigger, and therefore the result is faster. These can be summarized in practicing the 6 perfections. And so now I want to leave you with the opposite of stopping the harm and stopping the killing and stopping the thing. What your mind should grow into is a garden of where you see life and you want to protect it. You see a moving anything and you want to protect it. And that's how you know you're on the right track. When you see other people hoard things or get things, you're helping them keep their things that they wasted their life to get. It's valuable to them, you help them keep it valuable. You see people having relationships, and for the few moments that it's not destroyed through circumstance, for the moments that they have a relationship, you sit there and instead of wanting it for you, you wish some lovely happiness for them. You know, and for me, this the first couple I married was Mira and Jared, who just had a baby. And I remember having had a relationship breakup and feeling, oh, I don't have that relationship, and I don't have, and I was going through that, and this occurred to me. And I was watching, they were sitting looking at Geshe Michael, and they were separated, they were there. And I remember sitting there wishing, I thought I was taught to bring people together, to value relationships. So instead of whining and complaining that I don't have a relationship and I'll never find that, which is a karma planted, which must have the same stupid result, do the opposite. So look around for who's in a loving relationship. And I remember seeing Jared and Mira, the back of them, and sitting there, I wasn't even listening to my holy teacher, I was just looking at them and willing them to hold hands. I'm like, she probably wants a cuddle and he probably wants, and I remember wishing their hands would touch, wishing their hands, and I remember their hands touching. And the feeling was magnificent, and within a year I married them. Yeah, and it might sound bizarre and disconnected, but this is the experiment you need to do to prove to yourself whether this is a solution to your world problems or not. You have to do some kind of that. And when you so the fourth one, instead of lying, you verbalize truth. Which means, like you said, you'll be silent a lot of the time. Yeah. And whenever you speak, catch your words and make sure it unites people rather than separate them. This is how you know you're on the right path. When you make sounds, make sure they're sounds that you know will bring pleasure. You reserve your words for wisdom. You know you're on the right track when you are happy, when you're thinking happy, when others get happy, when you see people happy and you're like, wow, that's nice. That's nice that they're happy. And when you see other people failing or not quite getting what they want, you suffer a little for them and you wish fortune upon them. Or you sneak in at some fortune. I remember John Stillwell seeing a lady that had lost some money or something, and she was troubled by this, and he had overheard that it was $20. And so he got $20 and sort of threw it where she might be looking next, and she found her $20, and it was very nice. And then when you start looking beyond the cycle, beyond the activity of this daily world for truth, when you know that you're not going to get happy by getting other people's stuff, when you know you're not going to get satisfied by having the better relationships, and beyond the nominal everyday things, when you know that there's some power inside of you, when your worldview says, I have the capacity to shift my reality, when you begin to think that way, you know you're on track. And I prefer this way of looking or measuring my capacity, because I have all those 10 and I confess them in front of you and everyone, and I wish I didn't, but that is what keeps us bound to this thing called cyclic existence. And to know how far away you are from them is how close you are to these. And with that, let's do a quick dedication, and then sorry to keep you. Kuki Jishin Metoktra Rira Lingshin Yinde Impadi Sange Shindu Mite Vilwagi Dropu Namda Shinla Shivarsho Hiram Guru Ratnamandalakam Nilyatayami Diyope Sunan Yeshe Tsoksok Shin Sunan Yeshe Lejunwe Dampa Kuni Tokasho. Thank you so much for spending time thinking about these things. May you find peace in your world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.